Hey everybody, my name's Kim. Welcome to my channel, Crafted by Kim. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below so you get notified every time I upload a video. Now, let's get started. For today's first DIY, we're going to make a Hello Pumpkin sign. I used one of the beaded frames from the Dollar Tree, took the packaging off, and removed the back. Once it was all taken apart, I went ahead and I painted the frame with folk art vintage white paint and let it dry. I did have to put 2 coats on to cover the frame because that frame wood had almost like a waxy finish to it, so it did take a couple coats to cover the whole thing. Once I put a couple coats on the frame itself, I set it aside and let it dry. While the frame's drying, I go ahead and I take the back of the frame and use folk art in the color Succulent. It is an acrylic paint. It did take 2 to 3 coats to get it covered nicely in order to not be able to see any of the back of the frame. Next, I took one of the little wood pumpkins. I believe they come in a pack of 8, and I fill it with spackle just so that it covers the hole because I don't want to see the hole in the project that I'm doing. Once the spackle was dry, I went ahead and I took a piece of painter's tape, placed it about 3/4 of the way down so I could make an outline on the pumpkin. I imagine you right with me. Once I had the outline done, and I apologize for the video, the camera got a little off center, I used Varathane wood stain in my favorite one that I use all the time for everything, which is the dark walnut, and I just stained the pumpkin. Once the stain's dry, go ahead and remove the painter's tape. Now on to the next step. In the next step, we're going to take 2 more pieces of painter's tape, and you're going to outline on each side of the unfinished wood. Once you have the outline nice and straight, I used DECOR in burnt orange. It's another acrylic paint. It just so happened, I like to use folk art, but I used the DECOR for this one just because I really like the color and I couldn't find one that matched in the folk art. But you can use whatever color you want. I just like the burnt orange. Just another one and say it's me you've been looking for, like I've been looking for you. To finish off this cute little sign, I used my Cricut Maker and made the vinyl transfer Hello Pumpkin. I will try to link down below a description or the font that I used so that you can recreate it in the same font if you'd like. The last step is to just use a hot glue gun, glue the pumpkin to the back of the picture frame, and put it all back together. Once it's all back together, you'll have the cutest little pumpkin sign that you could use for a tiered tray, or you can put it on a shelf like I did to decorate with other things that you have. Anyways, the finished product, I hope you guys like it. For DIY number 2, we have a little pumpkin planter, and the first thing you're going to need is one of these little wooden pumpkin fence-looking type signs. The first thing I did was removed the jute cord that was on it for the hanger, And of course, just like I did with the other little wooden pumpkin in the first DIY, is I take spackling and I fill the holes so that you can't see them when I'm finished. Once the spackling was all dry, I went ahead and I took folk art in vintage white and I painted the pumpkin. I did have to do 2 coats on this as well just to get it covered nicely before I would move to the next step. For part 2 of this cute little planter, you're going to need one of the wooden crates that you get from the Dollar Tree. And you guessed it, I'm going to use the Varathane wood stain in dark walnut. That is my absolute favorite, and if you don't like it, I apologize, but you're going to probably see a lot of it in my videos. When I'm staining things, I don't use anything fancy to stain them with. I either find an old rag that I've got in the garage and I just cut it in pieces, or an old sock, because Lord knows we all have old socks, because the washing machine tends to eat at least one of every pair that I've noticed. So if you're like me, you've always got an old sock laying around. They come in quite handy when it comes in staining. So in this last step, I'm going to have to apologize. I did lose the footage to the orange accents that I put on the pumpkin. All I did was I took that burnt orange DecoR acrylic paint that I used in the previous DIY, and I just dry brushed on the paint just to give it a little bit more of a colorful effect as opposed to just being plain white. So once that's done, as you see, I'm just going to glue with my hot glue gun the crate onto the pumpkin. Once it's done, just fill it with any kind of floral of your liking. I did get all of these sunflowers from the Dollar Tree and fill it up, and it is the cutest ever. I hope you guys like it too. For the last DIY in this video, I'm going to make a wood riser with some of the little pumpkins from the Dollar Tree, of course. The first thing I'm going to do is I've got one of the wood plaques from the Dollar Tree. So the first thing that I do is I take the sticker off of the back of the plaque, and I'm going to take the wood beads that I just had on hand. I think that I got those in a bundle set from Amazon, and I can also link that down below if you're interested in those. And I'm going to take the hot glue and I'm going to glue those to the back of the wood plaque. Now that I have it all glued together, I'm going to use Waverly White chalk paint, and I will show you why I'm using the Waverly White, actually chalk paint, instead of acrylic here in a few minutes. So I'm going to coat that down. I believe it took 2 coats to cover it nice and good, and let it dry. once the white chalk paint is completely dry, I take Folk Art Antique Wax and I just take a paper towel and I start dabbing it onto the riser. Once I've dabbed it on, I just start to kind of smear it around. There's really no rhyme or reason or technique that I use as far as applying it. I just kind of make it a little heavier in some places and lighter in others so it gives it a nice wood textured look. So to style the little cute riser that we just made, I am going to take these 3 pumpkins. They come in a 3-pack and they have these little clips on the back so you can clip them on things. So I take the clips off and they just kind of pop right off the back. I take out the stems from the top because I want to use those later and I don't want to get paint on them. So I take those out and again, they just kind of slide right out and I set them aside so that I can use them later. So once I have them taken apart, I actually take a barbecue skewer, which you could use a dowel rod, you could use probably even a toothpick, anything that will stick in the bottom of the pumpkin so that you can paint them without getting paint everywhere. And I just found that it's a little easier to do it that way than it is to just try to paint them on a flat surface. Also saves a little time, that way you don't have to paint them, let them dry, flip them over, paint them, let them dry, so on and so forth. So after I have them all set up to paint, I actually painted them 3 different colors. You can choose whatever color fits your decor. I actually just used the colors that we've been using throughout the entire video. So the folk art, I used the vintage white and the succulent, and then the deco art paint, I actually used that burnt orange, just so I could kind of tie the whole piece all together when I was finished. Now, when I was painting these, I will say that the paint doesn't actually stick very well. Had I had to go back and do it again, I might have tried chalk paint or even spray paint. Might have worked better. It did take me, I think, 3 coats of on each pumpkin to get them to look and have the color that I wanted when I was finished. Once all the pumpkins have dried completely, you just put them back together, leaving the clips off, and put them on the cutest tray ever, and here you have it. Once you're all finished, you can add them to a tier tray or a shelf or whatever place you have in your house that you're looking to add an extra little touch of fall. I hope you guys liked the video. It's the first one I've tried to do with voiceover, so I hope it turned out well. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. Comment down below, be gentle, it is my first one, but I'd love to hear comments so I can try to improve for the next one. Thanks, and I hope everybody has a great day.